Maturity model isn't like a report card, right? It kind of is an assessment, but it's not a report card. Like everybody wants to get all A's. If you are a $2 million agency, being optimized in all 5 of those areas probably is a waste of money and a waste of time, to be honest. Like you don't need to be striving for the top on every one of these areas. You need to strive for what's allowing you to make the best decisions in all these areas. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the show. This is our first recording of 2025, which we're going to explain why throughout this podcast. But before we get to the details of what we've been working on, I want to just see how Jody's been doing. I know Jody's always got interesting stuff going on. So what's new in your life right now, Jody?
Oh, not a ton actually. So this the first part of January and February is typically a slow time for me. I do a lot of traveling, and with that, the slow time is I have not traveled a ton for conferences. I think I've been only to 2 different conferences to speak. Outside of that, the only travel I've been to would be going to see the Eagles twice at the Sphere, not once, but twice at the Sphere. And my wife wants to go a third time. That just tells you how great of a concert it was. I love concerts. I go to tons of concerts. I've never really had a concert experience like that before. I've seen U2 there before, and we're going to go see Kenny Chesney later on at the Sphere. But the Eagles were great. They had awesome songs. They sounded great, and they had some really cool special effects. So that's been my highlight so far for the first quarter here in 2025.
Yeah,
how about you?
That sounds awesome. Yeah, I know going on concerts, we're talking about seeing Pearl Jam together here in a month. So I need to get back to you on whether I can make it down there or not. But as we've talked about on the podcast before, I think I'm a huge Pearl Jam fan. And I think once you see them live, it'll change your concert experience going forward. They're pretty good. Yeah, as for me, I know our listeners know I'm obsessed with basketball, but I don't know if they know I've also started coaching a high school basketball team this year. So the last 4 months I've been busy doing that at night and sometimes on weekends. So that was a new experience for me to actually coach an official high school team. And we had a really good season. We were right on the verge of making the playoffs as a first year program, which was really exciting. And we did finish over 500. So it was a ton of fun coaching the boys, and they were all really good kids, and learned a lot from them. And the head coach I learned a lot from as well. So it was a fun experience for me.
You didn't even tell us how your son's doing. I mean, you obviously you coach him. So how's he doing?
My son is a freshman on the team, and he started 19 out of 21 games, which is pretty exciting for a freshman. And it was a 4A team, so it was a pretty good sized team. And he did a really good season. As the season started, the reason he was the starter is because he was reliable. He didn't make a ton of mistakes, but that was pretty much his whole role out there. But as the season went on, he started to make more plays and score more points and get more assists. So it was really fun to see his evolution and to see him play. So he had a good season. I'm excited to see where it goes next year.
That's cool. So he definitely took after Adrian then.
Yes, definitely. We are. It's funny. Alex and I are completely different basketball players. It's been fun to watch because I play a little bit different than Alex does. And always have. Cool. So let's jump into what we've been working on the past 8 months. So we had a retreat this summer in June, and we have a retreat every 4 months, every quarter, every 3 months. And so in that retreat, we decided that we wanted to kind of change the way we're doing our consulting work, and we wanted something that we could hang our consulting work on. So what we came up with was a maturity model. And so we've been working through it pretty much nonstop, and it's where I've been spending the majority of my days, is really working through this model and perfecting it so that when companies come to work with us, we can see where they are when it comes to business maturity. So this is what we've been working on for the past 8 months, and it's been a really fun experience for me. But Jody, I want you to talk a little bit about that meeting and the discussions we had and why this is the answer we came to as the best way to talk about financial maturity with small businesses.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So often when we actually meet with clients, especially for the first time, we always get the question, what's your ROI? And it's like, well, that's really depends upon if you listen to us or not, right? I mean, we can only advise, we can't actually do, the work for you. And so, it comes up probably in every prospecting call, almost every one of them. We get that, we get something sort of that. And I thought, well, how can we actually give them an ROI? Because again, people forget pretty quickly what, when you've been in an engagement for 5 years, you forget where you were prior to the engagement. So I tried to turn that around and make it an ROE instead of an ROI. ROE standing for return on experience. And so what's your experience been with the firm or our service line since inception, or where do you want that experience to go? And with that, if we can take that experience and rate that, then we know that a prospect can see, oh yeah, here's where here's where I'm at today, and here's where I want to be. And I might want to be there for many different reasons, whether it's an exit plan, like a sale or a merger, or whether it's just simply I want to grow this and be the best business that I can possibly make it. And where am I at today? Because a lot of times we just don't know what excellent looks like, and striving towards excellence important for most business owners. And so the nice thing about the ROE idea is that we can kind of then go back to it, not only during onboarding, but after the first year, after the first 6 months, after maybe the 18 months, or whenever that might be, and bring it up again and show the client, hey, here's where you started. Here's what your objectives were, and then here's where you're at today. You still want to continue down this path? Are we still on track, or do you want to divert and go somewhere different? Maybe you didn't want excellence at the time the engagement started, but now you do. So now the goalpost has changed a little bit, and our CFOs can know that, and then can change and adapt to the way that they present their service level to them.
Yeah, and it's the funny thing about the maturity model was, if you go back to our very first podcast, the first thing we did was we did 4 episodes on our 4 elements of profit-focused accounting. And so
don't go back to those. Don't go back to those.
Yeah, don't really go back to them. But if you look at the titles, of them, don't actually listen to them. But yeah, we've had these 4 elements of profit-focused accounting for a long time, right? So when we started this podcast 4 years ago, that was just the tip of the iceberg. We were doing it prior to that, and it's always kind of been the foundation of how we've educated people when it comes to finance and accounting. Is we've had these 4 elements that we've talked about, and those 4 elements are cash management. So how do you do with your cash? How do you handle your cash? They're forecasting. Do you have a forecast? How often do you look at that forecast? Do you have a plan for your business? It's profitability. Do you understand your income statement and how you make money? And then finally, it's sales outlook or pipeline. So those are really the 4 elements that we've always kind of talked about. And so as we were talking through what do we need to do to make our consulting better, the real answer was we just need to do what we're already doing, but go a little bit deeper on it. And so that's really where the maturity model came from. So we did add 1/5 element to it, which is financial reporting, which again has always kind of been in the background, and it's behind all of those things. And this is the first thing we tell a client when we're working with them, is that if your accounting records are incorrect and they don't make sense, then none of that other stuff matters, right? I can build a forecast for you, but if that forecast is built on fake numbers, that forecast is completely wrong. So we did add that 5th element to our maturity model. But again, it's kind of what we've always been doing, but it's given us a chance to measure it and have more frequent conversations and let the client know where they're at with it. And then the other part, and Jody talked about this briefly, is when it comes to prospecting and when it comes to a free tool that we're providing for people out there in the community. Jody, you want to talk a little bit more about that and what's on the website?
Yeah, sure can. So we actually decided, hey, we're going to put this and give this to our clients, or give this to anybody who really wants to go to the website and input their information. It's about a 10-minute process, pretty simple. I think there's 15 questions. A business owner should know all the questions right off the top of their head. And then afterwards, they get a really nice report that kind of details, hey, here's where you're currently at, with some action items and things you might want to do going forward. And I thought it was kind of neat because when we actually do all of our presentations, we do the presentations in a way to educate. And that's really important to us because we don't want to come through as a really a salesy organization by any means. And so the idea is that, hey, if we can educate and you can do this by yourself and figure it out by yourself, man, high five to you. We've got many, many, many people that we've spoke to, companies over the years that have come up to us at, months afterwards or years afterwards and say, man, I think that was the best thing we could have ever done is buy your book or listen to your presentation, because we implemented everything and we're great. Those are really even cooler than the ones that actually are clients that we actually help them on a regular basis, because it's like, wow, we really kind of made a difference there. And so that's kind of what the assessment's for. Hey, you can go in and do it yourself, figure out where you're at. And like I said, it's a very quick process. And at the end there, you can kind of get a report and say, hey, here's what great looks like, and here's where I'm at compared to greatness. And that's just available for everybody that wants to be on the website, or everyone wants to go through that process. And then also for those that say, hey, I don't want to own the financial side of the business. I want somebody else to take ownership of that. And that's why I hopped on your website to begin with, as a virtual CFO service line there. And so, with that in mind, then, it's the first step in the process of determining whether or not you're a good fit for the company. And going through our sales call, we can actually go through that really quick with you and, determine, hey, here's where your blind spots are, and here's the different areas that you probably need to look at, and here are the services that we have to offer to be able to help you through those areas. And so it's kind of a nice 1-2 punch there. And then, like I said, Jamie leads it right into the onboarding, and kind of go from the sales call, if you can, to the onboarding, and how that actually works.
Yeah, I will definitely jump into that, but I want to tell a story before I do that. So we were in Copenhagen in October, and I was sitting at one of the tables, and someone came up to me. We've spoken at Soda a couple times where we've done our metrics talk, and someone came up to me and was like, "Can I show you something?" And I'm like, "Sure." And they pulled up their laptop and they pulled up this Google sheet, and it was so complex, but it was exactly what we were doing and exactly what we've been talking through. And that was kind of the coolest experience for me. Is like, wow, someone can take this hour talk and listen to us twice and build this really cool spreadsheet. Maybe they, listen to a couple of our podcasts or heard us talk a couple other times. But like you said, it is really cool when someone can kind of take what we're talking about and run with it and build their own thing out of it. And again, so that's kind of one example of that. But that was a really cool experience for me to see that someone can just take what we're talking about and build it into their business and make their business better without us even like working with them. So that was kind of a fun little story to kind of bounce off what you said there. But going forward, so after a company comes into onboarding, we do what we call discovery. And so during that discovery, we're looking at two things. One, we're looking at the books and records. We want to make sure that the books and records are at the right place for us to start our relationship with the company. And so that's part of the discovery. But the other part of the discovery is assessing the companies in all the 5 areas I just mentioned. I will mention them again because I did talk fast. So the 5 areas, again: financial reporting, cash management, forecasting, profitability, and sales outlook. So we will take them through and ask a ton of questions, look at their records, look at their process documentation, and look at how they're handling all 5 of those areas. And then once they're in onboarding, we will have a meeting, and hopefully this meeting, and this is the goal that I'm working on with all of our CFOs, this meeting should happen within 2 to 3 weeks of signing up with us. We will sit down and we will assess you in all 5 of those areas. And what we're going to assess you on is 5 different categories or 5 different assessment levels. So the highest is optimized. So optimized really just means that you're able to make real-time decisions. Something comes in right now, I can make a decision in any of those 5 areas. That's really what optimized means. And the bottom is ad hoc, which means, I don't use data to assist me in my decisions at all, right? So that's the top, being I'm able to make real quick decisions, or the bottom, it takes me, I don't use data to make decisions at all. I kind of make decisions based on my gut. And then in between there, so ad hoc being the lowest, the next would be foundational. The definition for that is being able to make reactive decisions. So I can make decisions, but oftentimes they're after the fact. Then we have standardized, which is able to make proactive decisions. I can make decisions where the data is a little bit ahead of time, and I'm going to say, okay, if this happens, I can make this decision. So that's the third level. Integrated is the point where you're able to make strategic decisions. The decisions you're making are based on strategy and based on where you want to go. And then I've already mentioned the top level, which is that optimized, being able to make those real-time decisions. So we hope that we can sit in onboarding and say, for financial reporting, you guys are foundational. Cash management, you're foundational. You guys don't have a forecast, so you're ad hoc for forecasting. Profitability, you kind of understand your financial statements, but not very well, so we're going to call you ad hoc there. And then for sales outlook, you guys actually have a great sales team. You're doing a really good job in that area, so you guys are standardized. So we're able to make those assessments really quickly in onboarding. And then the nice thing about that is we'll say, by the time you're done with onboarding, we hope you're at least foundational in all 5 of these areas. And this is how we're going to get you there by the end of this 8 to 10 week period. And so that's really the process of onboarding is making some pretty quick jumps because we've done it so many times, right? It's not really common for you to go from ad hoc in 5 areas to foundational in 5 areas over an 8 week period, but are pretty experienced in doing this. And so we can really get you to that second stage or that second level pretty quickly.
Yeah, and as Jamie mentioned, we really take a super deep dive into that. Like, for instance, in financial reporting, we're going to cover different things like your accuracy for financials, the timeliness, the process you have in place, the automation you have, any kind of tax compliance and planning, and then the risk management. So it's not just dealing with, do you have a pretty financial statement? It's really dealing with the inner guts of that process and how things are put together. And then, as Jamie also mentioned, you may come in and, with the goal, hey, I want to be optimized in a certain area. For instance, you might want your financials might be accurate, but in real time, financial reporting is updated daily. That might be the optimized thing, but you may dig deep into it and realize, man, in order for me to get that goal, I'm going to have to do all this extra stuff. Maybe I really don't need it. So, what's the one right below that I can really achieve for? Because there's too much weightlifting, involved in going to that optimized. I just don't see the bang for it, the bang for the buck in that. And so it's really a deep dive into not only the processes and what's out there, but really what's your end goal and what do you want to get out of it? What do you want to get out of this process? Do you want to get that integrated part and stay there in all the different areas, or hey, is cash so important to you? You want to make sure that cash is optimized, but I'm cool with understanding metrics and everything for the, in my forecasting. Maybe I don't need that as optimized. So there's a lot of different variables you can play with. Every client coming in, I could see being completely different on where they fall when they come into the program, and then really what their goal is. And like I said, their goals may change. Like I said, they may be optimized initially and realize, nope, I'm going to go back to integrated. That's just where we want to be. And so there's a lot of flexibility in that. In that process, and that's what the onboarding is designed for, and that's what the CFOs are designed for throughout the process, is identifying, hey, where are you truly at? Because you may think you're in one area, one bucket, and realize, pretty quickly that you're not.
And that's probably one of the things I'm most excited about in this onboarding process, because I'm going to be pretty involved in it over the next 6 months as we roll this out, is to see who took the self-assessment and how they self-assess versus where we assess them, and have those conversations. And what we've seen so far is, this was the biggest fear of when we kind of introduced this to the CFOs, is if someone comes in and they self-assessed as integrated, and then we're telling them they're ad hoc, like, they're gonna fire us. They're gonna be like, what do you mean I'm ad hoc? I really thought I was integrated. And so, like, just to have those conversations, so far they've gone really well. People are like, oh yeah, when I took that test, I probably was a little optimistic on how quick our financials are being done and are being completed. And so I think that I'm really excited to see the difference between how people self-assess and how we assess them. And I love Jody's point, and it's really one of the key things of any maturity model. Is a maturity model isn't like a report card, right? It kind of is an assessment, but it's not a report card. Like, everybody wants to get all A's, right? That's the goal when you're in school, or not everybody, but most people are really shooting for those A's. But like, if you are a $2 million agency, being optimized in all 5 of those areas probably is a waste of money and a waste of time, to be honest. Like, you don't need to be striving for the top on every one of these areas. You need to strive for what's allowing you to make the best decisions in all these areas. And so, like, again, that's been the fun part of these conversations as well, is like, obviously once you put a scale to anything, and business owners are competitive, the first thing they're going to think is like, okay, I have to get straight A's. I have to get to that top. But once you start turning it into a conversation, it kind of moves away from that. It moves to like, what is the best place for my business to be successful? And this is kind of what I want Joey to talk about next. Is he ran this model by a bunch of small business owners and a bunch of business consultants at Pinnacle. So, Joe, do you want to kind of talk about that experience and the feedback they gave us?
Yeah, no, I'd be happy to. So this has been a couple of weeks ago. We wanted to kind of get an idea, really what the interest would be with this type of a maturity model, for business owners. And so I approached a bunch of Pinnacle guides at the last Pinnacle event that I went to. And Pinnacle is basically business coaches. So, coaches, they coach the Pinnacle business processing system. And with that, who better to ask, because they're meeting with business owners all the time, talking about everything from profits to processes throughout their entire organization, not the financial side of it. And so it's like, wow. And when they looked at this and I presented it to them, it was like, wow, the light bulb just kind of went off. It's like, this is a great idea, because again, with that, people, business owners, if they're going to struggle, they're going to struggle in the financial side for the most part. Most business owners coming in, I'd say probably 80% ish, and there's no stats to prove that, but are great at processes and great at what they're doing, but they really lack in the financial side of the business, and they put that last because that's always the last thing, whether it's collecting on receivables or whatever that might be. It's always a last place position. And with this, they thought would bring it to the forefront and really be a really positive impact for those business owners. And so they gave me a lot of tips on, hey, here's a lot of things we need to do to make sure that the folks that actually visit the website truly actually go in and take the assessment, because of the value they're going to get from it is real, and not just simply a marketing tool all by itself type of thing. And so they're really excited about it, and so excited about it. We've got our next conference that we're going to speak at Agency Builders Conference coming up in St. Augustine just in a couple weeks. We're going to actually implement this into our presentation. We get an hour presentation with over 100 business owners or marketing agencies, basically all different sizes, from a couple $1 million in revenue to $50 million in revenue plus. So again, a wide range. It's going to be interesting to see the feedback and that we're going to get from those folks is the really key thing. Jamie, what's your thoughts on that? And what do you think the feedback's going to be actually?
Yeah, I'm excited for the feedback, because I think that it's going to be what I just talked about, of going from taking the assessment to the onboarding is going to happen, I think, pretty quickly in a 2-day conference there, because what we're going to do is we're going to present on one section. So we're going to talk about cash, and we're going to talk about where cash should be. Then we're going to have people take the 2 or 3 questions, and we're going to tell them where they landed, like where their score would be in the cash section. And then we're going to do that for all the sections. But then at the end, we're going to just sit at a table and be like, hey, if you want to come talk to us, we'll talk about your score, and we'll talk about where it sits. And so people might come to us and be like, yeah, I think I'm integrated for all this, and we might start asking you a couple more questions, like, wow, that's awesome, let's dig into that. And then we might find out they're actually foundational. So I think it's going to be a really quick eye-opening for a lot of different people. And then I also think this is going to be one of those presentations where, kind of one of our favorite presentations, Jody, we might only make it through one section, because we're going to talk about cash. We're going to give people the questions, they're going to answer them, and they're going to have 1,000 follow-up questions that they're going to want to ask as we're up there talking. And so it's going to be interesting to see if we can make it through all 4 sections in this presentation.
Oh yeah, and it's pretty rare that we actually get through all 4, so that wouldn't be a surprise for sure.
Yeah, definitely. Great. So any final thoughts on this maturity model, Joe? I know we're both very excited about it, and I hope our listeners are going to check out the link in the show notes and go find this and take it and see where they stand. But any other final thoughts our listeners should be thinking about when it comes to their financial maturity?
It's kind of funny, because I was also talking to the Pinnacle Guides, and they've got their 5 pillars that they really focus on. I'm not going to go through all 5 of them with them, but when we went through this, I thought, man, it would be nice to have a maturity model for each of those pillars, whether it's, their marketing playbook, hey, how does, marketing, what's the integration part? What about their technology and all that kind of stuff? And so the idea for folks to actually take this as a, to see where their financial acumen is, where is cash, where is production, where's your forecasting metrics, your pipeline, how does that all tie into it? And where do I want it to be as a company, that's going to get me, my biggest multiple when I exit out eventually, because, as we look at different clients as they come aboard, the clients that are going to get the best bang for their buck are the ones that are going to want to sell their business eventually, whether it's in 1 year, 2 years, or 5 years down the line, is going to want to really push to have as high of a score as they can in each of these buckets. And so this will give them a little bit more perspective on, hey, what do I need to do to get that 20x or that 15x or whatever that at multiple is. I have to really be strong in all these areas, and where am I weak at, and where do I need to improve at? And I think it's going to be a really good eye opener for a lot of folks out there that just want to get the best the best outcome for their business when that business does come to an end.
Yeah, no, I think that's going to be the fun part. I think is when you and I are podcasting 2 or 3 years from now, and clients have been through this process for 3 years, because some of these things, like I said, we can get you from ad hoc to foundational pretty quick, but from getting foundational to standardized or integrated, it might take 2 years for some of these things to take that next step. And so it's going to be fun to see where companies' scores are when they come in and where they are after 2 years and what it means for them as a business. Like, we think we know, what it means for them as a business to make those jumps, but it's going to be really fun to have some stories to talk about companies on where they were in day one and where they were on month 18 or year 3. And so I think we're going to continue to talk about this over the years, and it's going to hopefully be a lot of success stories of companies that have improved, not just for sale, but maybe for their size, or maybe for their growth, or maybe they're making a bigger impact than they thought they could. And so it's just going to be fun to see where companies grow as they move through this model. And I'm really excited to be part of that growth for them. So yeah, that was excited for this, and also excited to start podcasting with you again, Jody. I know you and I work together a lot, but podcasts are just different because we get a chance to kind of hang out and talk through different things, and I get to hear about your Eagles concerts and stuff. So I'm excited to get back on the air a little bit and talk through these things.